Many times they want something from you, they don't see something in you.
They want something from you, but they really don't see something in you.
But we mistake it as they see something.
Hmm.
Oh, they must see something in me, they want to be with me. Instead, they want something from you. And that can be an easy trap we fall into. And then we align with someone because we thought they saw something in us when really they wanted something from us.
Welcome back to ReedFlections, a podcast on life, leadership, and learning. I'm Art Calderon. I'm here with Reed Nyffeler. Reed's a CEO, a local business leader, a husband, and a father. And we are just churning through a whole lot of podcast episodes here. I feel like we already know each other. Let's do a brief recap, Reed. Episodes 1 through 4, we talked about priorities. We moved on to habits. Know your purpose, start your journey, be present on purpose, and currently, this section here is about a legacy of purpose. And we are now on episode 26, if you can believe it, 26. And today we're talking about align to grow, align to grow. So tell us, Reed, about aligning with people, gathering people around you that you have a certain alignment with. What are you looking for, and how do they help you grow a legacy of purpose?
Yeah, and so I think first it's important to understand the power and purpose of alignment, right? Because nothing big is accomplished by one person, right? We can only get so much done by ourselves. No matter how much we try to accomplish.
You mean Bill Gates didn't do that all by himself?
He didn't do it by himself, right? They can't do it by themselves. And so then we sometimes go by ourselves because we can't find alignment, right? It's like, I can't get someone to go where I want to go. I'm going to go by myself.
Mm-hmm.
However, when we find alignment, we can go way further. So I think sometimes we avoid, we're alone. We don't spend time with people because we can't find alignment. And I think sometimes we're waiting for people to come for us instead of seek those who we align with. And I think that's a critical thing to discuss. We're waiting for the aligned. It's, as I say, if you can't find a friend, be a friend. And let's use that example. So if you can't find someone to align with you, go find someone that you can align with.
Oh, okay.
And so that's a big part of that as well, is we want to find someone we can align with.
Mm-hmm.
And alignment will accelerate going forward. And I'll give a story that speaks to that. And, I don't know the exact numbers, but the story makes sense. And so, when there's a Clydesdale, they say, can pull 8,000 pounds.
Okay.
Right?
Big horse.
A big
Huge,
horse,
strong horse.
It's a huge, one of the strongest horses. It can pull 8,000 pounds. And so you'd think if you had two Clydesdales together, you'd pull 16,000 pounds.
Right. Times two, right?
Times two would be natural. They can pull. However, realistically, they say two Clydesdales equally yoked of the same strength and size and stature can actually pull between 20 and 24,000 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so the math is exactly what alignment can create. We can be better versions of ourselves and collectively pull more by working together as a team. Right. And ultimately, this works in every scenario, that if you have someone that you believe you are aligning to and working for, right? That's why you see championship teams work together. They're playing for the other person when they say that, because they're aligned versus playing for themselves and trying to get the statistics. And so I think you see that consistently going forward.
Sometimes, isn't there a danger or a temptation to just surround yourself with people who only align with you, who only agree, especially in a leadership position like you are, so that there's a danger you could be surrounded by people who just say yes and don't give you the bad news when bad news needs to be delivered, right?
Right. I think any leader the echo chamber doesn't do anything but confuse you, right? I mean, I think we want, and humans, we want people to agree with us.
Sure.
And
better.
It feels better. We want affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
We want validation, but that doesn't lead to progress. Right. And so an echo chamber is going to be affirmation and validation. Do you believe what I believe? Yes, 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 yes. But have we been enriched? No. And are we truly going to make progress or not? Right. And so one thing that I've decided to is I aligned with the producer of this podcast. And that was really easy for me. Might be more difficult for you. I don't know. But ultimately,
so far, so good.
Okay. And I notice even as we prep for these things, there's alignment with myself and the producer around really what we're trying to accomplish for the podcast. It's a little more difficult for you, right? And it's not, well, I mean, there's lots of reasons for that. But one of them is because your role is different than mine.
Right.
Right. And so the producer I chose in this case, and that would align with my thoughts, my approach, my experience, and, has, different levels of alignment with you in a different capacity. So in this environment, we're aligned because we think like-minded with regard to the content and how we deliver it. You want literal and I want conceptual. So I'm aligning with a conceptual thinker that can translate to the literal. And so that's where the alignment starts, and you choose someone that you align with, and then ultimately makes it a lot easier and more fluid.
Now, the best laid plans sometimes go awry, right? And have you ever found yourself aligned with somebody that maybe initially you thought was going to be okay, or there was some differences, but you thought you can overcome them, and then sometime down the road you realize this is not going to work, right? And what do you do then, or what did you do?
Absolutely. And so I think as an early leader, for sure. I mean, many times we look at, I'll call it resume items we're missing, and we want to hire the people that can fill that resume.
Okay.
And so hypothetically, let's say we need someone that you can pick any profession you need to balance out what you believe isn't your skill set. And then what happens is, even if they have that expertise, and again, I'm not going to name any areas, but just think of that expertise, whether it's a doctor or any educated thing that you think like, I need this expertise. However, they align maybe they fill in a gap, in technological understanding, but they do not align philosophically.
So the skill set may be what you need filled,
Right.
But if that philosophical,
Correct,
you're not on board there, then that's not going to matter.
That's exactly right. And so early I'm saying, I don't know X, Y, and Z in business. I don't know X, Y, and Z in life. And so I want to find the person that others recommend in X, Y, and Z. Instead, I'm saying they don't want to go the same direction for the same reasons I do, even if they know that. Right. And so that is where the misalignment happened. And that is torment.
Can't imagine.
And, if we looked at it on paper, it's why you see teams that say they have the skill set, but they come together and it never works. Is like, wait a minute, if you just added up their scoring, and let's use sports as an analogy, you add this scoring average, and this scoring average, they should be scoring a lot of points. But why doesn't it work? They run the offense differently. Philosophically, they don't agree. And so that's where the breakdown ultimately happens, is there's misalignment even though there's skills. And it's not something that doesn't say they don't have skills. It just means they're not aligned. And so that's why it's super critical. And you actually have regression. And then the initial reaction is back to where we started. Well, I'll just do it by myself. I don't need anyone because I picked wrong the first time. I'm always going to pick wrong. And what I would challenge you, if that's the things that you're thinking, is don't never pick someone again. Change the characteristics of what you're picking to align with.
Okay.
So instead of picking on skills now, instead of picking on gaps I have, I pick on, can I align with this person in character and culture? Because especially in this day and age, all those skills can be learned. When we're born, we don't have any proficiency in any particular area, right? We can't even talk, actually, right? I mean, I would imagine you were probably, not as good of a host at 6 months old as you are now.
Not nearly.
Not nearly, but close. I mean, your voice wasn't probably as deep. It's probably the only difference, right? Yeah. So ultimately, that is you've developed as a host. At least your vocal cords have, at the very least, which is what the audience loves, right? Your deep, sultry voice. Saying that we can get so fixated on the skills that are developed over time instead of the character, right? I'm sure, our characters would have aligned at 6 months old. You would have taken my lunch then on the playground just as much as you would now.
Yeah. Your lunches are better now.
Oh, thanks. Well, that happens when you can afford them.
Now, do you plan to find these people to align with, or do sometimes you just find someone coming into your life through either some relationship or a work thing or a neighbor? Or how do these people come into your life?
Well, and as we've walked through this on all the podcasts, I have clarity around who I am. And we can't know who we're going to look for if we don't know who we are. So if you are with us all the way through this podcast and you're clear about your purpose and your purpose statement, then you can begin to determine who would you align with in that purpose. And so I'll use the example of the story of my wife, right? I had visualized well before I met her what I knew would be the perfect alignment for a significant other, for me particularly, right? And so I really understood who I was in my teens. And I knew that I needed someone that would be a detail person, right? I have theoretical big picture items. I need a detail person. I know you haven't probably picked up on this, but I'm not all that empathetic and sympathetic,
The well is dry.
I need someone that has a little bit of sympathy. I wanted someone that wanted children. And so I needed someone that's patient. And ultimately all these characteristics in it aligned. And I thought through all of these things, right? And so then ultimately here, I met my wife for the first time. And then boom, here is a teacher. She was a teacher at the time, getting her degree to become a teacher, and then embodied all the characteristics of what I was looking for. And I was like, this is someone I can align with, right? Because I visualized who I'd align with best. And that's where that started, is you think in your mind, who would I best align with? Because people will ask to align, and that will feel great that, hey, they want me to align with them. They see something in me. But that's sometimes the biggest mistakes we make. Because many times they want something from you, they don't see something in you.
They want something from you, but they really don't see something in you.
But we mistake it as they see something. Oh, they must see something in me. They want to be with me. Instead, they want something from you. And that can be an easy trap we fall into. And then we align with someone because we thought they saw something in us when really they wanted something from us. And that's where then they take that something they had from us and then they leave and we're like, wait a minute, I thought you saw something in me that is a form of partnership or alignment instead of wanting something from me.
Wow. Now, is there room for unexpected connections? You know, like for you talk about your wife and you planned for that. You know, you knew who you wanted to marry. But is there room for an unexpected connection sometime where you can create that alignment, or you see the alignment and then you maybe move forward in a business relationship or some other type?
Yeah, I think that happens all the time, actually. And it's similar to in the circumstances of my wife. I say, these are the people I'll align with. Right. I mean, these are the personalities that I can align with. Right. And I think, you're an example of that. Right. I mean, people I can align with are people that have similar character that I can joke with.
But I got him with a couple of zingers.
Oh, okay. So then I'm like, okay, Art can banter back and forth. Right. So I can align with him and we can joke at the expense of each other and for the entertainment of the audience all day if we wanted to. But ultimately, I think that's where the natural alignment would be. Say, okay, so where does he fit in the organization? And there's only one place, and that's a seat next to me here because I haven't found anywhere else you fit. And
I'll take it.
Okay, fair enough. And so that's where you look at alignment. You say, hey, let's create a podcast because Art's voice needs to be shared with the world. But ultimately, that's where you see those happenstances, and they happen all the time in business. And this is just an example of that. And I think that's how our lives are enriched, because if we plan it too frequently and we have too much of a planned life, we miss opportunity. And I think that's where, it's often said that opportunity is held in an open hand.
Okay.
Because if we take opportunity with a closed fist, we're not sharing it. We can't create alignment. If it's held in an open hand, it can be replaced with something bigger and better. Right. It's kind of like that, pick a door. There was a, let's make a deal. Right. And you can pick a door 1, 2, or 3. And many times you had to give up what you had for the opportunity for something better. And sometimes it's easy and obvious, but sometimes it's not. And that's the challenge, right? Is like, let's make a deal. Do I want to give this up? It's of marginal value, but I know it's tangible. Whereas if we have alignment saying, wait a minute, I've watched this show long enough to know this is the middling gift. So I have a 50-50 chance the other 2 doors, it's going to be good or bad. And am I willing to take that risk? And so sometimes we try to make alignment by happenstance and it'll work. And to a greater degree, as we develop experience as leaders, it will work. However, over time, it may not work. And we have to be careful about that at the same time. And so happenstance can work for you and against you. But at the same time, I'll caution everybody with this. If that happenstance is in desperation, it's more likely to fail.
So if you're so desperate, I just need somebody to help fill this role.
That's right. Yeah. If you are happenstance by desperation, it's a low likelihood of success because you've emotionalized what you would have otherwise intuitively looked at and logically, right? Because that is where there are people that are there to try to align, to take something at that time you're in your most vulnerable state.
Well, I think anybody who's ever been in a position to interview and hire people have probably done it.
That's right.
At least one time, right? Where you say, man, I really got to fill this role. This guy, I got some misgivings, but I really need to fill it, so I'm just going to fill it. Right.
Yeah, and I think, one other comment that I wanted to make is we can align with people, and then we need to align in circumstance. And so even if we're aligned with those people, there is obviously going to be circumstances where we may or may not align. And so put in parameters or stages to do that. And so I'll give an example. My wife and I have 2 different styles, right, of parenting, of life and otherwise. And in that case, it's aligned. We're aligned that we want our children to grow and be productive members of society. But my approach and their approach are 2 different things, right? Wholeheartedly, I, obviously want to make sure they're developing. And as we look at our 4 kids, we have 2 daughters and 2 sons, what is effective in their development. So we need to be aligned and we need to say, okay, as parents, what are the standards we've established for our kids? And then to what degree is this effective over time? And so if, for example, I have one standard and my wife has another standard and we're not aligned, they're going to leverage that against us. So if you're truly aligned in partnership, as we are in our marriage, you need to also communicate in those circumstances. And so now in a business setting, that's something I do often, right? So I have multiple direct reports. And before I make a big decision, I want to make sure that everyone in there is aligned. Not that they wholeheartedly agree, but they're aligned that, yes, we're ready to move forward, right? And we'll see what that looks like and adjust accordingly. Because if there's not alignment, what happens when I leave the room saying, we're not going to do that? I'm your boss, don't do what he said. Right. And that's something I eradicate immediately because we're not effective. Back to the team with the Clydesdales. If one Clydesdale's walking the other direction and the other, they're pulling each other, they're not going anywhere. And that's essentially what happens in lack of alignment in a circumstance, even though they could be walking the same direction together, those Clydesdales, and doubling the weight they're pulling. If they're pulling against each other, they're not even pulling the 8,000 pounds they could. And that's why circumstantially, even if they could be aligned moving forward, we need to also look and make sure we're aligned every circumstance as well. And that's super critical.
All right. So alignment with others. Important to find people you align with, bring them into your life, bring them into your relationships, and that will help with your living a life on purpose. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Reed. We've come to the end of another fine podcast. Thank you, listeners. Please get your friends and family to listen in. We'd love to hear from you. Next time, we're going to continue with our final series of episodes, Reed. We're finally coming, the light at the end of the tunnel. And we're going to be finishing up season 1, focused on a legacy of purpose. We'll talk about authentically mentoring others next time. Until then, I'm Art Calderon. Be purposeful.
Alignment is so critical for us to accomplish our goals and live a legacy on purpose. First, if you have not chosen who you best align with and you don't know those characteristics, leave this podcast today. Write it down and say, if I were to accomplish my legacy on purpose, here is the characteristics of the individuals I would align with. Then look at your friends, look at the people you're currently aligned with, and make sure they embody those characteristics. If not, find those who you can align with that will help you accomplish your purpose. Do that today, and you will be better for it.